They didn't erase Ethan Walker by accident. They erased him on purpose. One report, one refusal to stay silent, and a system that decided it was easier to make a man disappear than to answer his questions. Ethan vanished in the middle of a frozen night. No witnesses, no calls for help. Only blood in the snow, and a dog who stayed when everyone else walked away. What followed was never meant to surface. Interrogations hidden from records. A cover-up protected by rank and authority. A man pushed to the edge for knowing too much. They believed fear would finish the job. But they forgot one thing. Some truths fight back, and some bonds bleed before they break. This is the story they tried to bury, and failed. The last thing Ethan Walker remembered was the sound of gravel under tires. Not loud, not sudden, just wrong. It was the kind of sound a soldier noticed when everything else went quiet. The engine idled behind him. The road was empty. The Montana dusk stretched long and cold, turning the pines into black silhouettes against a fading sky. Ethan stood near the edge of the road, his faded multicam jacket pulled tight against the wind. The patch had been removed years ago, but the fabric still carried the shape of service. On his head, the same worn U.S. Army veteran cap he always wore. 2 dog tags rested against his chest, dull with age. His black military watch, oversized and scratched, ticked steadily. Too steady for a man whose life had never truly slowed down. Beside him sat Rex. The German shepherd didn't lie down, didn't relax, didn't blink much. Brown and black coat, lean and powerful. Tactical collar, no leash. Ears upright. Eyes fixed on the truck that hadn't moved since it stopped. Rex didn't growl. That worried Ethan more than if he had. Ethan turned slightly, not enough to look threatening. Years of discipline still lived in his muscles. "You hear it too?" he said quietly. Rex's ears twitched once. The truck door opened. 2 men stepped out. No uniforms, no insignia. Clean boots, civilian jackets that tried too hard to look ordinary. "Ethan Walker?" one of them asked. Ethan didn't answer right away. He'd learned a long time ago, names were leverage. "Depends who's asking." The man smiled, but his eyes didn't. "She'll just need to ask you a few questions." Rex shifted his weight. Ethan noticed the other man subtly angle himself, blocking the road. Military habit, poorly hidden. Ethan exhaled slowly. "So you found me," he said. The smile faded. "You shouldn't have talked," the first man replied. That was when Ethan knew. They weren't here to scare him. They were here to silence him. 3 weeks earlier, Ethan had done the one thing that ended his career. He'd refused to sign. The paperwork had been clean on the surface. Logistics transfers, equipment losses written off as operational discrepancies. But Ethan had been supply-side long enough to recognize patterns. Weapons that disappeared too often. Vehicles decommissioned too conveniently. Funds routed through contractors that never delivered. He'd flagged it, quietly, by the book. That alone had made him a problem. When he pushed again, when he submitted the evidence to an external oversight office, he became something worse. A liability. 2 days later, his clearance was suspended. A week later, he was forced out of the Army under administrative separation. No trial, no hearing, just silence. But corruption didn't disappear because someone left the room. It waited. The first punch came fast, not to the face, to the ribs, enough to drop him. Rex lunged. A sharp crack split the air, metal against bone. Rex yelped once as something struck his shoulder. Blood darkened his fur immediately. "No!" Ethan shouted. That was the mistake. The second blow came harder. Hands grabbed him. The world tilted. Gravel scraped his cheek. He tasted iron. Rex fought, silent, vicious, but there were too many boots, too many angles. Someone kicked Ethan's head sideways. The sky went out. When Ethan came back, there was no sky, only darkness, concrete under his back, cold, damp, a slow drip somewhere nearby. His wrists burned. Zip ties. Tight. His mouth tasted like blood. Not much, just enough to remind him he was still alive. A single bulb flickered overhead. Two shadows stood in front of him. "You should have walked away," one voice said calmly. Ethan laughed. It came out broken. "You stole from your own people," he replied. "You don't get to tell me what I should have done." The answer was pain. Not graphic, not theatrical, just methodical. They didn't rush, didn't scream. They wanted something specific. Names. Files. Who else knew? Ethan said nothing. Hours passed, or minutes. Time blurred. At some point, warm liquid ran down his forehead. He didn't check. He didn't need to. What hurt most wasn't the blows. It was the silence afterward, the waiting. He thought of Rex. That was the dangerous part. They dragged him upright at some point. His vision swam. "Last chance," the voice said. "We make this easy, or permanent." Ethan lifted his head with effort. "Then do it," he whispered. "Because I'm not helping you bury it." A pause. Then a different sound. A door opening. A low, familiar growl echoed through the space. Not loud. Controlled. "Rex. Get that damn dog!" The sentence didn't finish. There was chaos. Shouts. Movement. Ethan heard Rex snarl, then a sharp sound, followed by a pained whine. "Rex!" Ethan tried to move. Couldn't. A wet thud hit the floor. Someone swore, then everything went black again. Ethan woke to white light. Not harsh. Soft. The smell told him before the sound did. Hospital. Machines hummed. A slow beep marked time. His body felt heavy. Distant. He tried to move. Pain answered. A presence pressed against his side. Warm. Familiar. Ethan turned his head slightly. Rex lay beside the bed. Bandages wrapped around his shoulder and chest. Fur matted but clean. Breathing steady. One ear lifted. Their eyes met. Rex didn't wag his tail. He just stayed, like he always had. Ethan swallowed, throat burning. "They didn't finish it," he murmured. Rex blinked once. Outside the room, footsteps passed. Voices. Controlled. Quiet. Someone knew Ethan was awake, and someone, somewhere, knew he was still alive. Ethan closed his eyes again, not to rest, but to remember. Because if they had tried this hard to erase him, whatever he had uncovered was bigger than he thought. And this time, he wasn't walking away. The first thing Ethan felt was weight. Not pain, weight. Heavy, crushing. Like the air itself was pressing down on his chest, daring him to breathe. Then came sound, a slow, mechanical beeping, steady, relentless, too clean to belong to the place he remembered. Ethan's eyes fluttered open, white ceiling, harsh lights, a hospital. For a split second, panic surged, his muscles tensed, instincts screaming move, fight, run, but his body refused to respond. His limbs felt distant, disconnected, as if they belonged to someone else. A deep ache throbbed beneath his ribs. His throat burned. His head felt packed with sand. He was alive. That realization didn't bring relief. It brought questions. He turned his head slightly and froze. At the foot of the bed, curled tight against the metal frame, lay Rex. The German shepherd's brown and black coat was matted and shaved in places. Thick white bandages wrapped his shoulder and chest. A clear IV line ran from his leg to a hanging bag beside the bed. But his ears, those ears were still upright, alert, watching. The moment Rex sensed Ethan's movement, his head lifted. Amber eyes locked onto Ethan's face, sharp despite exhaustion. Rex didn't bark, didn't whine. He simply rose as much as his injuries allowed and rested his head against the mattress. Still here, still guarding. Ethan's throat tightened. "Hey!" he rasped. The word barely made it out. Rex's tail thumped once, weak but deliberate. A nurse entered moments later, startled by the monitor spike. "Easy, Mr. Walker," she said gently, adjusting the IV. "You've been in a deep coma for almost 48 hours." 48 hours. Ethan's mind raced. Images surfaced in fragments. Snow turning red, hands holding him down. A voice, calm, educated, military, asking the same question again and again. "Who did you give the files to? Who else knows?" He swallowed. "Rex?" he whispered. The nurse smiled softly. "Your dog's the reason you're still here," she explained in careful tones. A local hiker had found them near an abandoned logging road. Ethan unconscious. Rex bleeding heavily, but still standing over him, refusing to move, snapping at anyone who came too close until help arrived. Even sedated, Rex had been wheeled in beside Ethan. "He never left," she added. "Wouldn't let us take him out of the room." That didn't surprise Ethan. Nothing about Rex ever did. After the nurse left, silence filled the room again. But it wasn't peaceful. Ethan stared at the ceiling, piecing things together. This wasn't random violence, not a robbery, not a mugging gone wrong. They had known his name, his service record, what he'd seen. Years ago, near the end of his military career, Ethan had stumbled onto procurement reports that didn't line up. Equipment listed as delivered that never arrived. Funds rerouted through shell contractors with familiar names. When he asked questions, doors closed. When he pushed harder, warnings came. Then came the choice: sign the silence, or disappear from the system. Ethan chose the third option. He reported it. What followed ended his career overnight. Administrative separation, they called it. No charges, no trial, just a quiet erasure. But the files had existed, and someone, somewhere, knew Ethan still remembered where the bodies were buried, figuratively. Apparently, they decided memory was a liability. A shadow moved outside the glass door. Ethan's eyes shifted instantly. Two men stood at the end of the hall. Suits, no badges visible, not medical staff, military posture, too straight, too still. Rex noticed them at the same time. A low growl vibrated in his chest. The men stopped talking. One glanced toward the room, then quickly looked away. Seconds later, the door opened. A man in a gray jacket stepped inside, flashing a laminated ID too quickly to read. "Mr. Walker," he said smoothly. "I'm with federal investigators. We just want to clarify what happened." Ethan didn't answer. He watched the man's hands. Clean, calm, controlled, the kind of hands that never shook. "I'm sure you're confused," the man continued. "But the official report states you were attacked by unknown assailants. No motive. No suspects." Rex stood as much as he could, placing himself between the man and the bed. The growl deepened. The man smiled, thin and practiced. "Easy," he said. "No need for hostility." Ethan finally spoke. "You're not here to help." The smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second. "That's not accurate," the man replied. "We're here to make sure you don't misremember things." Silence stretched. Ethan felt it then. Not fear. Resolve. You should leave, Ethan said quietly. The man leaned closer. For your own good, Mr. Walker, it would be wise to focus on recovery. Accidents happen. Survivors move on. Rex snapped his jaws, sharp, warning. The man straightened, expression hardening. We'll be in touch. He left. The door shut softly behind him. Ethan exhaled slowly. They thought he was broken, scared, grateful just to be alive. They were wrong. He reached down, fingers brushing Rex's bandaged neck. They made a mistake, Ethan murmured. Rex's ears twitched. They should have finished it. Rex looked up at him, steady, unquestioning. Outside, snow began to fall again. Somewhere beyond the hospital walls, someone was already rewriting the story. But Ethan Walker was awake now, and this time, he wasn't going to disappear quietly. Ethan Walker was discharged at dawn. No press, no paperwork ceremony, no thank you for your service. Just a clipboard, a signature, and a nurse who wouldn't meet his eyes. Outside the hospital, the air was sharp and clean, mountain cold, the kind that burned the lungs and reminded a man he was still alive. Ethan pulled his faded multicam jacket tighter around himself. The fabric was worn thin at the elbows, the colors dulled by years of sun and dust. His black military watch felt heavy on his wrist, solid, reliable, unchanged. Rex limped beside him. The bandages on the German Shepherd's shoulder were fresh, clean, tight. Tactical collar still around his neck. Rex, etched clearly in white lettering. They moved slowly, not weak, careful. Ethan could feel it. Eyes. Not on him directly. Not obvious, but present. A dark SUV idled across the street. Engine running, windows tinted. Too clean, too patient. Ethan didn't look at it again. Rex did. The dog stopped. Ears forward, body angled. A low vibration rolled through his chest. Not a growl meant to warn, but one meant to remember. Target acquired. Ethan placed a hand on Rex's neck. Easy, he murmured. They kept walking. The cabin sat deep in the tree line, miles from the nearest paved road. No neighbors, no cell signal, just wind, pine, and silence. Home. Ethan locked the door behind them and leaned against it for a moment, breathing slowly, counting heartbeats. 1, 2, 3. His hands trembled, not from fear, from restraint. Rex lowered himself onto the floor with a quiet grunt. The effort cost him. Ethan noticed, always noticed. I know, Ethan said softly. We'll take it slow. He knelt, carefully checked the bandages. Clean. No bleeding. Good work by the vet. Rex licked his wrist once. Permission given. Trust confirmed. Ethan stood and crossed the room. The footlocker sat exactly where he'd left it. Old. Scratched. Military issued. Forgotten by everyone except him. He opened it. Inside, folded fatigues, a sealed MRE, a worn notebook, and a flash drive wrapped in oilcloth. Ethan stared at it for a long moment. This was why they'd come for him. Not because he talked, not because he threatened, because he remembered. He sat at the small wooden table and plugged the flash drive into an old laptop. The screen flickered to life. Files loaded. Invoices. Shipping manifests. Photos of equipment crates stamped delivered, but never logged in unit inventories. And one folder marked Archer Black. Ethan's jaw tightened. Archer Black wasn't a person. It was a program. An off-books logistics pipeline designed to move weapons and supplies without oversight. Originally justified as operational flexibility. But somewhere along the line, it had become something else. Money bled out. Gear vanished. Names disappeared from rosters. When Ethan questioned it, The warnings began. Then the discharge. Then the abduction. Rex suddenly lifted his head. A sound, far off. Tires on gravel. Ethan closed the laptop instantly. He reached under the table and pulled out a compact first aid kit and a small metal case. Inside, his dog tags, still warm from his chest. He slipped them over his head. The sound of tires grew closer, then stopped. Rex rose, slow, controlled, injured but unyielding, and positioned himself between Ethan and the door. Someone knocked. 3 times. Not hard. Confident. Ethan didn't answer. A voice followed. "Ethan Walker, we know you're inside." Calm, professional, male. "You're not under arrest," the voice continued. "We just want to talk." Ethan moved quietly, peering through the side window. 2 men, plain clothes, one with an earpiece, the other scanning the tree line like a soldier, not a civilian. The same type as the hospital. They didn't stop hunting. Rex's growl deepened, sending a warning through the floorboards. Ethan placed a hand on the dog's head. Then he spoke. Clear, steady. "You've got 10 seconds to leave." A pause, then a chuckle. "You're not in the army anymore, Walker. You don't give orders." Ethan's eyes hardened. "No," he said. "I survive." He reached down and flicked the cabin lights off. Darkness swallowed the room. The men outside stiffened. Rex barked once, sharp, close. The men stepped back instinctively. Glass shattered as something struck the side window, but missed the interior. Smoke drifted in. Not lethal, disorienting. Ethan moved. He opened the back door silently, guiding Rex into the trees. The forest swallowed them instantly. Branches scraped, snow crunched, breath fogged. Behind them, voices shouted, "Search pattern! Don't let him—" The words cut off. A scream followed, short, surprised. Then silence. Ethan didn't look back. He didn't need to. Rex limped at his side, bleeding slightly through the bandage, but still moving, still protecting. They didn't stop until the sun rose. On a ridge overlooking the valley, Ethan crouched and wrapped Rex's shoulder tighter, hands steady despite exhaustion. "You didn't have to," Ethan said quietly. Rex leaned into him. Yes, he had. Ethan looked out over the land. The system had tried to erase him. Failed. Now they'd made another mistake. They'd reminded him who he was. A soldier doesn't disappear when you take his uniform. He adapts. He survives. And when he's ready, he comes back. The man lived where roads gave up. No address, no mailbox. Just a narrow dirt track climbing into rock and timber, carved by decades of weather and a deliberate choice to be forgotten. Ethan parked the truck behind a stand of pines and cut the engine. Silence rushed in, thick, watchful. Rex lay in the back, breathing shallow but steady. The bandage on his shoulder had darkened slightly, not bleeding fast, but bleeding enough. "We'll be quick," Ethan whispered. Rex's ears twitched. He understood. Ethan adjusted the brim of his faded U.S. Army veteran cap, checked his black military watch, then stepped out into the cold. A single cabin sat ahead, reinforced windows, solar panels angled low. No smoke, no lights. A rifle clicked. "Hands," a voice said, older, calm, unafraid. Ethan raised his hands slowly. "Captain Hayes," he said. "It's Walker." A pause. Then the rifle lowered. "Damn," the voice replied. "I heard you were dead." Ethan almost smiled. Caleb Hayes had been Ethan's battalion logistics officer once, one of the few who had asked questions, and stopped when the cost became clear. He walked with a limp now. Left knee, old training injury, retired early, off-grid by choice. Hayes looked past Ethan, then froze when he saw Rex. Jesus, he murmured. He did that for you? Ethan nodded. Inside, the cabin smelled of oil, coffee, and old paper. Hayes set Rex down gently on a padded bench and examined the wound with practiced hands. Knife, Hayes said quietly. Not deep enough to kill, deep enough to send a message. He cleaned the cut, reinforced the bandage, then looked up at Ethan. They found you because you still have something, Hayes said. Didn't they? Ethan pulled the flash drive from his jacket. Hayes stared at it like it was radioactive. You should have burned this, he said. I tried, Ethan replied. They wouldn't let me. Hayes plugged it into a hardened terminal. Files scrolled, names, routes, contracts buried inside contracts. Then Hayes stopped. His face went pale. Archer Black, he said. You don't even know what that really is, do you? Ethan didn't answer. Hayes leaned back. It's not just logistics, Hayes said. It's protection for people high enough that exposure would collapse careers, elections, budgets. How high? Ethan asked. Hayes hesitated. Above my pay grade, he said. Above yours ever was. Ethan thought of the men at the hospital, the cabin, the silence that followed the scream. They'll keep coming, Ethan said. Yes, Hayes agreed, because now you're a variable. Hayes opened another folder, one Ethan hadn't seen before. Inside, internal memos marked sealed. A name appeared again and again. Brigadier General Thomas Rowe. Ethan felt his stomach drop. Rowe had testified publicly about ethical procurement reform. A decorated officer, untouchable. Rowe signs off on Archer Black, Hayes said. Not directly. He doesn't touch the money. He authorizes the exemptions. Then why not expose him? Ethan asked. Hayes met his eyes. Because if you pull that thread, Hayes said, the whole thing unravels. And when systems unravel, they crush whoever's holding the end. Rex shifted, letting out a low sound. Half pain, half warning. Hayes glanced at the dog. He's telling you something, Hayes said. Ethan knew running wasn't enough anymore. What if I don't go public? Ethan asked. What if I bait them? Hayes stiffened. Don't, he said. That's suicide. Ethan shook his head. They already tried to kill me, he said. Quietly, now they're sloppy. Hayes understood then. You want them to make a mistake, Hayes said. On record. Ethan nodded. Silence stretched. Hayes sighed and reached for a burner phone. There's one journalist, he said. Military oversight, old school. Doesn't scare easy. He slid the phone across the table. But Walker, once you call her, there's no going back. Ethan picked up the phone. Rex rested his head against Ethan's leg. Still here, still choosing. The phone vibrated. Unknown number. Hayes frowned. That's not mine, Ethan answered. Mr. Walker? A familiar, calm voice said. You're harder to erase than expected. Ethan's eyes narrowed. You left your cabin, the voice continued. That complicates things. Ethan glanced at Hayes. Rex's ears went rigid. Where are you? Ethan asked. A soft laugh. Close enough, the voice replied. You have something that belongs to us. We'd like to trade. For what? Ethan asked. For your dog, the voice said gently. And your silence. The line went dead. Ethan stood slowly. Outside, engines hummed in the distance. Hayes reached for his rifle. Rex struggled to rise, wounded, furious, unyielding. Ethan placed both dog tags in his fist. They just made it public, he said quietly. And this time, he wasn't going to walk away. The engine stopped at the tree line, not rushing, not hiding. confident. Ethan counted the seconds between door slams. 3 men. Maybe 4. Footsteps measured, disciplined. Not hired thugs. Not amateurs. Hayes whispered, "They're fencing us in." Ethan nodded once. Rex tried to stand. His injured shoulder betrayed him. He growled, low, furious, then forced himself upright anyway, placing his body in front of Ethan without waiting for instruction. "Stay," Ethan said softly. Rex didn't move. Ethan exhaled. He understood. Sometimes staying was moving. A voice carried through the trees. Calm, familiar. "Walker, this doesn't need to escalate." Ethan stepped into the doorway, hands visible, posture relaxed. The faded multicam jacket hung loose on him. The U.S. Army veteran cap shaded his eyes. Dog tags rested against his chest, unmoving. His black military watch ticked. Steady, defiant. "You named the price," Ethan said. "Say it again, slowly." A man emerged from the shadows, mid-50s, clean jacket, no insignia. The kind of authority that never wears rank because it doesn't need to. "We want the drive," the man said. "And your promise that this ends tonight." "And Rex?" Ethan asked. The man glanced at the dog, calculated. "Medical transport, best care, new handler, quiet retirement." Hayes stiffened. Ethan felt the ground tilt. Not with fear, but with clarity. "You don't retire soldiers," Ethan said evenly. "You abandon them." The man smiled thinly. "Ideals are expensive, Walker." Ethan nodded. "So is silence." He reached into his jacket, slowly, and held up the flash drive between 2 fingers. "This," Ethan said, "this is worth more than you think." The man's eyes sharpened. "Careful." Ethan turned to Hayes. "Start the clock." Hayes tapped a key. A soft chime sounded from the cabin. The man frowned. "What did you do?" Ethan answered without raising his voice. "I scheduled a release." Silence fell. Heavy, immediate. 3 dead drops, Ethan continued. Encrypted, time-locked. 1 journalist, 1 congressional aide, 1 independent auditor. If I don't check in every 6 hours... The man stepped forward. "You're bluffing." Ethan met his gaze. "Try me." Rex barked once, sharp, final. The man's jaw tightened. He hadn't expected preparation. He'd expected panic. "What do you want?" the man asked. Ethan didn't hesitate. "Public testimony, on record, and immunity for the dog." Hayes added quietly, "And you walk away." The man laughed, a sound without warmth. "You think you can dictate terms?" Ethan lifted his dog tags. They caught the light. "I already am." A phone buzzed in the man's pocket. He checked it. His expression changed. Just a fraction. Someone else was watching now. "Call them off," Ethan said. The man weighed the forest, the cabin, the dog standing on 3 legs and still daring him to try. "Medical team in?" the man said finally. "We leave." Ethan nodded once. "Now." Minutes stretched. Then footsteps retreated. Engines restarted, then faded. A white medical SUV rolled forward. Paramedics approached slowly, respectful, eyes on Rex. Rex tensed. Ethan knelt, resting his forehead against the dog's. "Easy," Ethan murmured. "I've got you." Rex's tail thumped, weak, stubborn. As the medics worked, the man turned back. "This isn't over," he said. Ethan looked up. It never is. The SUV doors closed. The convoy left. Silence returned. Different this time. Not hunted. Watched. Hayes let out a breath he'd been holding. "You just forced a crack." Ethan stared at the tree line. Cracks spread. He glanced at his watch. 6 hours. Then the truth would move without him. The clock didn't tick. It judged. Ethan watched the black military watch on his wrist as the minutes bled away. The second hand moved with the same indifference it always had, steady, unforgiving. 6 hours. Somewhere between now and sunrise, the truth would either surface or be buried one last time. The medical facility wasn't a hospital. It was cleaner than that. Quieter. No signage. No waiting room. Just locked doors and people who didn't ask questions unless the answers mattered. Rex lay on the steel table, sedated but breathing, chest rising in shallow, determined rhythm. The bandage on his shoulder had been removed, cleaned, sutured. Ethan stood a few feet away, hands clenched behind his back. The veterinarian, older, gray hair pulled tight, glanced up. "He was lucky," she said. "The blade missed the joint. Muscle damage, yes. Pain, definitely. But he'll walk again." Ethan didn't speak. He nodded once. That was enough. She softened. "He didn't stop protecting you, did he?" "No," Ethan replied. "He never does." Hayes's burner phone buzzed. Once, then again. Hayes checked it, frowned. "You're not going to like this." Ethan looked up. "They're trying to cut your dead drops," Hayes continued. "Legal pressure, injunctions, claims of stolen government property. They're moving fast." "How fast?" Ethan asked. "Fast enough that one outlet already hesitated." Ethan closed his eyes briefly. "They're not wrong," Hayes added. "The system hates uncertainty, and you're a walking one." Ethan opened the laptop. The folders were still there. Invoices, memos, the Archer black spine that connected it all. But now, there was something new. A message time-stamped 20 minutes ago. From K. Morris. Subject: verified. Ethan's pulse slowed. He opened it. Inside, audit confirmations. Independent, third party. Bank records tracing funds through shell companies, then landing in accounts tied to authorized signatories. One name circled repeatedly. T. Rowe, Brigadier General Thomas Rowe. The file ended with a note. "I tried to raise this internally. I was told to stop. I won't. If anything happens to me, release everything." Ethan looked at Hayes. "You said there was one journalist," Ethan said, "who doesn't scare easy." Hayes nodded. "She's already awake." The call connected on the second ring. "State your name," a woman said. Direct, no pleasantries. "Ethan Walker," he replied. "Former Army, discharged for reporting procurement fraud." A pause. "I know who you are," she said. "You weren't supposed to still exist." "Neither was this," Ethan said, and sent the file. Silence stretched. Then, "You understand what happens if I publish?" "Yes," Ethan said. "They'll say I'm unstable, violent, that I imagined it. They'll say your dog attacked someone," she added. "They'll say you staged this." Ethan glanced at Rex through the glass. "They already tried," Ethan said. "It didn't work." Another pause. Longer this time. "Give me 2 hours," she said. "But if this checks out, I go live." Ethan looked at his watch. 4 hours left. An alert chimed. Hayes cursed under his breath. "They're leaking first." A headline flashed on a muted screen. "Former soldier under investigation after remote incident. No names, no facts, just implication." Ethan felt the familiar pull, the weight of a system pressing down, daring him to fold. He didn't. He recorded a statement. No uniform, no flag backdrop, just the faded multicam jacket, the veteran's cap, dog tags resting against his chest. "My name is Ethan Walker," he said calmly. "I was discharged after reporting corruption I was ordered to ignore. I was attacked for remembering what others wanted erased." He paused. "My dog was injured protecting me. He did not attack anyone. He stood his ground." He ended the recording and cued it. Time lock, plus 330 hours insurance. A technician stepped out of the procedure room. "He's stable," she said. "When he wakes, he'll be sore, confused, but alive." Ethan let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Can he travel?" Ethan asked. "Not far," she said. "But he can sit. Be with you." That mattered. Ethan knelt beside Rex as he stirred, amber eyes blinking open, searching. "Hey," Ethan murmured. Rex tried to lift his head. Ethan supported it. "I'm here," Ethan said. "We made it." Rex's tail moved once, still choosing. The journalist called back. "It's real," she said. "All of it. I have 2 other sources confirming Rose's signature." "When?" Ethan asked. "Now," she said. "As soon as legal signs off." Ethan checked his watch. 2 hours left. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, far off, but moving closer. Hayes stiffened. "They're going to try one last thing." Ethan stood. "Good," he said. "So will we." He picked up the dog tags, the flash drive, and the phone. "Daylight's coming," Ethan said quietly, "and they can't stop it." Rex rested his head against Ethan's leg. "Ready." The first alert hit at 2:17 a.m. Phones vibrated. Screens lit up. A headline spread faster than the snow outside ever could. "Investigation reveals off-book military program." General named Ethan didn't read past the first line. He didn't need to. The room shifted, not physically, but politically. The quiet facility that had kept its distance suddenly filled with movement. Doors opened. Voices lowered. People checked badges they hadn't shown before. Hayes watched the feeds on a muted monitor. "They're eating their own," he said. That didn't take long. Another alert followed, then another. A statement from a senator distancing himself. A contractor denying knowledge. A spokesperson saying procedures will be reviewed. Ethan felt no satisfaction, only pressure. Because when systems fracture, they look for something to grab onto, and that something was him. Rex stirred, fully awake now. The sedative had worn off enough for him to sit upright. The bandage was clean. The stitches held. His breathing was steady, controlled. Ethan knelt beside him. "You okay?" he asked softly. Rex leaned forward and pressed his forehead into Ethan's chest. A choice made. The door opened without a knock. 3 agents entered, real ones this time. Credentials visible, posture correct. "We need Mr. Walker," the lead agent said. "Now." Hayes stepped forward. "On what grounds?" "Protective custody," the agent replied, "until we determine the scope of the threat." Ethan met the agent's eyes. "Or until you decide which story sticks," Ethan said. The agent didn't deny it. "Sir," the agent continued, lowering his voice, "things are moving fast. People are scared. Some of them have leverage. Being visible right now is dangerous." Ethan nodded slowly. "I know." Another alert buzzed. "Breaking. General Rowe placed on administrative leave." Hayes let out a breath. "There it is." But Ethan didn't move. "What about my dog?" Ethan asked. The agent hesitated. We can't." Rex stood, slowly, carefully. Pain flashed through him, but he didn't falter. He placed himself between Ethan and the agents. A low, controlled growl filled the room. Not aggression. Boundary. The agent raised a hand. "Easy!" Ethan rested a palm on Rex's neck. "He comes with me," Ethan said. "Or I don't go." The agent looked to his partner, then nodded. "Fine." They moved through a back corridor, lights dimmed, security tightened. Outside, vehicles waited, unmarked, armored enough to matter. As Ethan approached the door, his phone buzzed again. A call, unknown number. He answered. "Walker," a voice said, tight, rushed. "You did it! You blew it open! Who is this? Ethan asked. A friend, the voice replied. For now. Ethan paused. Listen carefully, the voice said. Roe isn't the end. He's a shield. The real approvals came from a committee that doesn't exist on paper. Ethan's jaw tightened. Names, he said. Not yet, the voice replied. But they know you're alive, and they know you won't stop. The line went dead. Ethan looked at Hayes. They're not done, Ethan said. Hayes nodded grimly. Neither are you. As they stepped outside, cameras flashed from a distance. Not close enough for faces, close enough for silhouettes. The story had a shape now. A man, a dog, a truth that refused to stay buried. Ethan lifted Rex into the vehicle with care. Rex settled beside him, alert despite exhaustion. The door closed. The engine started. As the vehicle pulled away, Ethan checked his watch. Dawn was coming, and with it, consequences. Morning arrived without ceremony. No sirens, no announcements, just light. Soft, pale daylight crept through the window of the safe house, settling on the floor like it had nowhere else to be. Ethan sat at the small table, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of coffee he hadn't tasted. Across the room, Rex lay on a thick blanket. Bandages still wrapped his shoulder and chest, clean and secure. He slept lightly, ears twitching at every unfamiliar sound, but his breathing was steady, alive. That was enough. Ethan checked his watch. The hearings were starting. The room they brought him into wasn't large. No flags, no cameras, just a long table, muted walls, and people who had spent their lives deciding what the public was allowed to know. Ethan stood when asked, sat when told, answered when spoken to. He didn't embellish, didn't accuse. He reported. Dates, routes, signatures. How Archer Black worked. How procurement exemptions were abused. How oversight became theater. How soldiers downrange paid the price while money moved cleanly behind desks. One man interrupted him. You're saying senior leadership knew? Ethan met his eyes. I'm saying they signed, Ethan replied. Silence followed. Another voice asked, Why come forward now? Ethan paused. Because I tried to do it the right way, he said. And you forced me out for it. No anger, just fact. By noon, the first resignations hit. By afternoon, indictments followed. The committee the caller had warned him about didn't survive daylight. Names surfaced. Memos leaked. Allies distanced themselves with practiced regret. The machine didn't collapse, but it cracked. Enough that people could finally see inside. Ethan watched none of it live. He sat beside Rex instead. The veterinarian removed the last outer bandage and nodded. He'll carry a scar, she said, but he'll run again. Rex's tail thumped once. Ethan rested his hand on the dog's neck. Good, he said quietly. They offered him things. Protection, a position, a chance to advise. Ethan declined them all. He didn't want to sit behind another desk pretending systems fixed themselves. He didn't want a medal. He wanted distance. What he accepted was smaller, quieter. With Nora's help and Hayes' logistics, Ethan opened a place far from press and politics. A converted ridge lodge with open land and long sightlines. A place for Q Binbi Bo Roy, and for Cho Nanghiep Vu Jan Huan Than Niem Vu Hung Kong Juoch Ven Ha. No sign out front. Just a simple name burned into wood. Rex Ridge Haven people found it anyway. They always do. Weeks later, Ethan sat on the porch as evening settled in. The multicam jacket hung loose on his frame, more worn now, softer at the edges. The U.S. Army veteran cap shaded his eyes. His dog tags rested against his chest. The black military watch ticked on, steady as ever. Rex lay beside him, scar visible, posture relaxed, but never careless. Ethan looked out at the land. The war hadn't followed him here, but the responsibility had. He didn't mind, because some soldiers don't stop serving when they leave the uniform. They just change who they protect. Rex shifted closer, pressing his weight against Ethan's leg. Still here. Still standing post. Ethan breathed in the cold air and let it out slowly. For the first time in a long time, nothing was hunting them.